Welcome back to the Big Blue Breakdown. And today's edition are the three key matchups the Giants need to deal with as they take on the Kansas City Chiefs in Sunday Night Football. I'm Paul Dottino. Well, both of these teams are 0-2. Yes, I know. Giants suffered a gut punch when they lost to the Dallas Cowboys in overtime last weekend. I understand it was painful. It was difficult for Giants fans to watch. It was difficult for the team to go through. But certainly, in one regard, well, what did they prove? They proved that they could put up 37 points and have the explosive type of offense that Russell Wilson and his deep throws can provide. Now, how will that work against Kansas City? It remains to be seen. But let's quickly go over the state of the Giants and the state of the Chiefs before we break down the specific three key matchups that people have to watch. First of all, for the Giants, all indications are as of Friday morning that star left tackle Andrew Thomas is trending upward and has a real chance to play against the Chiefs. Now, I don't want to say that Andrew Thomas's presence would automatically mean a victory for the Giants. No, that would just be foolish. However, what I can say is that his veteran presence, his smarts, and certainly his ability, even if he's going to be rusty, would have to be considered an asset to the Giants' O-line. They did not play well at all in the opener against Washington. There is no explanation for that. Last week, though, against Dallas, they held up fine. They were certainly functional, at the very least, enough that Russell Wilson could throw for the second highest passing total of his career, 450 yards, and a bunch of long touchdown passes. So even though the Giants didn't necessarily power block for the run as well as you would have liked, they heavily leaned on the pass because they knew that was Dallas's Achilles heel. And even though everyone knew they were throwing the ball around the yard, Dallas still couldn't do anything about it. The Giants had enough protection to keep Wilson upright and execute the game plan. So the question becomes, how will the offensive line play this weekend for the Giants, especially if Thomas is back in there? Well, the one thing that we can say that every coach will tell you is that mental errors are much more difficult to overcome than physical ones because mental errors don't even give you a chance to execute the play. So why do I bring that up? Well, if we believe that Marcus Bowe, the fifth-round draft pick out of Purdue, or the rookie who wound up coming in after James Hudson had that penalty-filled first possession against the Cowboys, Bowe played well. Don't get me wrong. He played well enough. He held up. But if we are to believe that as a rookie, dealing with Steve Spagnuolo's very difficult schemes and blitz packages that he's going to employ in this game for the Chiefs, that's a tall mountain to climb for any rookie to deal with. So no matter what Bowe showed the Giants physically last week, you're talking about a much more complex defense than what Dallas threw at the Giants. And so the odds would be greater that Bowe, as a rookie, may wind up getting fooled, may wind up picking up the wrong assignment, may wind up with a busted assignment. The odds are greater there against the Chiefs than they were against the Cowboys, even though he was thrown into the game on the Giants' second possession. And that's not a knock on the rookie. It's simply a fact. Steve Spagnuolo is a very experienced defensive coordinator. So, Andrew Thomas, having been in this league for a handful of years, he is a smart player. He has seen an awful lot. The odds are better, even if he is rusty, that he will have the mental part of the game down much smoother, much sharper. The recognition factor should really be an asset for the Giants if they can get Thomas out there on the field. So that's one huge issue going into this game as far as the New York Giants are concerned. Now, as of Friday morning, Flanagan Foles, the special teams linebacker, who was significant in kick coverage, was limited at he was out limited on Thursday's practice. Limited, let me get that right, with a calf injury. They changed his status. He was limited. Chauncey Golston with the sprained ankle in Dallas. He was not practicing. And Darius Muasau, the inside linebacker, not practicing. Again, the Giants are not only listing him in concussion protocol, but they're saying he also has an eye injury. So I don't expect to see Muasau for a bit, given that he's in the protocol, and we don't have any reason to believe that he's in the latter stages because we haven't seen him even outside on the sideline as the Giants have practiced. So chances are he is still in the early stages, and that means he's going to be a while. So that means Swayze Bozeman, who the Giants recently picked up only about a week ago. He's a special teams linebacker who actually played some for the Saints as he jostled between their practice squad and their roster during the 2024 season. He is now next up in line to start at inside linebacker next to Bobby Okereke. Bozeman's out of Southern Miss. He is an outstanding athlete. Now, he's a bit smallish at about 6'1", 215-ish or so. He has more of a safety's body than he does a linebacker's body. But in terms of his athleticism, he has all of the speed and the quickness that you could possibly want out of the position. He was an undrafted rookie free agent in Kansas City last year. And had he been at the combine, he was not invited. He was undrafted, right? Had he been at the combine, his pro day numbers would have ranked him in the top 4 in all of the testing categories. That's how much of an athlete Bozeman is. So the Giants, obviously aware of this, it's one of the reasons they picked him up. They saw he's got quite an impressive toolbox. You'll get a chance to see some snaps now on Sunday next to Okereke. So that's what you're going to have to look for. You might also see extra snaps maybe for Abdul Carter on the inside, some, because I'm sure he's going to get more snaps anyway as they ramp him up each and every week. How they use him, how they deploy him, I still think that remains a work in progress. He'll be all over the field. So you'll see some of Carter undoubtedly, but you're also going to see some of Swayze Bozeman. So we get that out of the way. As far as the corner situation, well, defense coordinator Shane Bowen says he thinks they'll continue to match up with Cordell Flott and Tay Banks against their specific opponents. Would not say how they plan on dealing with it in Kansas City. However, he did say both guys continue to play well and that Banks earned more snaps against the Dallas Cowboys. As a result, he had a higher percentage and would continue to do so. Now, again, how they deploy them still remains to be seen, but the Giants still seem to be satisfied that both Banks and Flott are going to get reps in specific situations that are better designed for each of those players. So that's the state of the Giants right now as we sit here on Friday morning preparing for Sunday night's game. Kansas City, they've got themselves a bit of an issue because Xavier Worthy, their first-round draft pick from last year, he is a speed burner with a capital S and a capital B. Well, he's got a separated shoulder. Now, he was limited at practice this week, but the question remains, will the Chiefs allow him to take contact? Because that joint is obviously not going to be very stable if he gets hit. Now, by saying he's taking limited practice, well, that's fine, because he can still run routes, run plays, and catch passes without being hit. Does seem to be the opinion of a lot of the Kansas City media that Worthy will not play against the Giants, meaning that Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster would be their 2 leading receivers, and then Tyquan Thornton, in all likelihood, would move up to being receiver number 3. Left tackle Josh Simmons coming off of an illness earlier this week. We'll see what his status is in terms of his ability to overcome and to show the necessary strength and durability. He, of course, was their first-round pick this past spring. The other interesting item to note is that Mike Dana, their starting right defensive end, has a quad injury, and it is unlikely that he is going to play. That certainly would not be something that Spags is going to be too happy about. He's been a veteran, reliable player. Charles Omenihu, the former San Francisco 49er, I would anticipate he probably gets the first shot to start at the other end position opposite George Karlaftis. You'll recall he was a former first-round pick just a few years ago. So that's kind of the state right now of the Giants and the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City, believe it or not, they own the NFL's longest active playoff streak, having gone to the postseason in 10 straight seasons. And now here they are in their first 0-2 start since 2024, the last time that they missed the playoffs. In fact, if you include last year's Super Bowl, actually February's Super Bowl from last season, the Chiefs have lost 3 games in a row. Now, I know that's bridging the 2 seasons, so I don't put much stock in that. But what is interesting about it is that Patrick Mahomes went 134 career starts without losing 3 straight starts in a row. He has now done that spanning the 2024 and 2025 seasons. So be that as it may, it is what it is. The Giants, obviously, as we continue this theme of 0-2, they are 0-2 for the 10th time in 13 seasons. And that is the most in the NFL during that time span. So they obviously are all too familiar with this particular status and want to do everything they can to get out of it. Kansas City has really struggled offensively in losing to the Chargers and the Eagles 27-21 and 20-17. They have only had the lead over those 2 games for a combined 2 minutes and 44 seconds. That is the second lowest time having the lead in the NFL this year. Only the Panthers, who have not led a game for even 1 second this year, have had fewer times with an advantage, fewer moments with an advantage over the first 2 weeks of the season. All right, now that we got that stuff out of the way, quickly, let's go to our 3 key matchups you're going to want to win if you're the Giants. Number 1 has got to be former Giants defensive coordinator, 2 times that is, and a Giants Super Bowl champ in addition to his titles with the Kansas City Chiefs, Steve Spagnuolo, who is going to be blitz happy. And he has been blitz happy so far in Kansas City. They only have 4 sacks through the first 2 weeks this season. But here is the big number to watch. The Chiefs defense has a blitz rate of nearly 50% through the first 2 weeks of the year. That is the second highest in the NFL, just behind the Denver Broncos. Now, why is that? Well, it's because Steve Spagnuolo knows he can't get enough pressure with his front 4. There's Karlaftis and now probably Omenihu at the ends. You've got Derek Nottie, the former Jet, and of course, multi-All-Pro Chris Jones at the defensive tackle spot. Jones has been incredibly quiet so far through the first couple of games, and you know that they are apt to move him around. Well, to this point, 4 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 quarterback hit. He has not been very impactful. And there were some people who even thought that last year he started to show a decline in production. He's been at it for a while, and maybe he's not quite the same player that he was. Obviously, when you look at Spagnuolo's blitz percentage this year, you can understand why people would think that about the Chiefs' front four. They are sending a lot of heat. By the way, in terms of quarterback hits, they only have 7. Think about this. The Chiefs have 4 sacks and just 7 quarterback hits. The Giants have 6 sacks and 12 quarterback hits. So if you're trying to put it into perspective, that's what the Chiefs' pass rush has looked like compared to the Giants' pass rush. So what I'm looking at is the number one matchup is Steve Spagnuolo's blitz package against the Giants' offensive line, and of course the tight ends and the running backs being able to pick up those blitzes. And just as important are the wide receivers making the correct hot reads. We know that Russell Wilson, 14 years in the league, has seen everything. So Spags is going to try to play chess against John Michael Schmitz, the Giants center, who has to make the line calls, and Giants quarterback Russell Wilson, who's going to have to make pre-snap adjustments. Well, as part of all of those adjustments, a big part is making the hot reads, because it's not just adjusting your blocking scheme or calling an audible and changing the play. It's also making sure that the wide receivers get the communication correctly, because they've got to make sure if that blitz is coming and Wilson says, okay, with his call, the blitz is coming, take 2 or 3 steps, break off that stop or that slant, you better do it, because he's got to get the ball out quick, knowing that the Chiefs are going to bring significant heat and the Giants may not be able to block it up. So Steve Spagnuolo against the Giants' ability to pick up the blitz and make the hot reads. That's got to be the number one matchup. And unfortunately, that relies on more than one person if you're the Giants. It relies on the entire unit to make sure that they can do what they need to do to be effective. The number 2 matchup, we will go with Chris Jones, the Chiefs defensive tackle, who will line up mostly against John Michael Schmitz and Giants right offensive guard Greg Van Roten. Now, we're going to obviously talk about that spot or that matchup anytime a stud defensive tackle goes up against the Giants' interior line, until the Giants' interior line proves consistently that they can take on high-level opponents and produce at a functional level. To this point, we're still not sure. That is still a show-me phase, in my opinion, if you're the Giants. So that is key matchup number 2. Don't let Chris Jones by himself make plays that can impact and take over the game, because over his career, he's done that many, many, many times. Key matchup number 3, if you're the Giants, it's going to be third safety Dane Belton, who comes in the sub package, and potentially what we're looking at is starting strong side linebacker Swayze Bozeman. I talked about him earlier in this video, probably bracketing Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. Kelce's a lot older these days. We know that. He's not maybe what he was earlier in his career. Who is, especially when you've taken the number of snaps that he's taken. We know Kelce had that drop, that deflection that wound up getting intercepted last week against Philadelphia. He's taken a lot of heat for that. And what do you know? He's probably going to be really burning to get right back on the horse and have a huge game against the Giants. Well, it'll be up to the Giants to try to contain him. Will they use maybe Bozeman sometimes in man coverage? Maybe they will. Will they use Belton sometimes in man coverage? Maybe they will. But there's also a chance they'll probably bracket Kelce a whole bunch as well, because I do think the Giants believe that they probably, and they have a right to feel this way, can play man up on the receiving core. The Chiefs receivers right now Well, it's not the most impressive receiving core in the league. Let's just say that. It's one of the reasons why Mahomes is having some trouble with this offense. In fact, he also happens to be their leading rusher right now because Isaiah Pacheco has not run the ball like he used to before his injury, and Kareem Hunt has also seen his better days in the league. So Mahomes is really not only the heartbeat and the soul of the Chiefs offense, he doesn't seem to have the highest level of tools in the toolbox to work with. So we're going to have to see exactly what Kelce's response is to last week's game against Philly. And the Giants better be ready for the best of Kelce because you would expect that he is going to want to prove it, especially on national television, that he still has superstar football left in him. So I think Belton and Bozeman probably have their work cut out for him. And I'm going to list them both. As I said, they're probably going to share the responsibilities dealing with Travis Kelce. Now, we'll be back with the Big Blue Breakdown. That will be our Game Balls and Gassers edition on Monday morning as we go through the Giants' offense, defense, and special teams and tell you about the pluses and the minuses of their performance on Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. Until then, I'm Paul Dottino. Enjoy your week, everybody.